Amazing, amazing. And don't give the secret away that I'm a big meanie. Don't. It was fantastic stuff, absolutely wonderful, and it was a romp. We knew that when we gave you the brief, Caroline, that it would be, that it would be fast-paced. But if that hasn't persuaded you to buy the book, I don't know what will. But it's not just that. Read the book, okay? I was sharing with Caroline earlier. It is one of those books that took me about a week to read, because every 2 pages I was throwing it across the room in complete rage, and spent the entire time saying to my husband, "Did you know?" And he was like, "Well, I do now." Okay, so moving on to our next speaker, and I'm delighted with how our two speakers this afternoon have really aligned. Kat MacAulay. Now, Kat will tell you that she still feels a bit uncomfortable calling herself a civil servant, given that she worked for 30 plus years doing pretty much everything else but be one. From running the first LGBT-owned and run cafe in Scotland, stints working in broadcast news analysis, community work, international emergency aid work, and most recently, over 10 years as an academic in teaching and consulting in design and computing all over the world. The one common thread in all of Kat's career has been her experience and absolute knowledge that anything done for us without us is likely to fail. She has been part of a pan-Scotland movement to build a shared common approach to service design in Scotland, an approach that we highlighted in our first report and recommendations of the Advisory Council. So please do join me in welcoming Kat MacAulay.
I'm just going to take a wee picture, if you don't mind. And I'll have a particular shout out from anybody in the room who remembers the Blue Moon Cafe in Edinburgh, because that was the cafe. Let me get this. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to get a big shout out. Woo! I'm taking that partly because it's covering me up while I'm doing a bit of this, but also partly because when Louise was introducing that, it kind of took me back in time a bit when she was talking about the strike, the Lee Jean strike. Oh, here, I'll tell you what, I'll just shove that up there, yeah, thank you. Yeah, don't worry, there we go. And it made me want to take that picture because I think if you told the 8-year-old girl standing slightly in tears on a football pitch in Lanark, having just been told that she wasn't allowed to play football anymore because girls didn't play football, she'd have been really astonished to find out that she grew up to stand here. And I think if you'd told the 13-year-old girl that was standing in a school playground, at Lanark Grammar School, in fact, looking at one of the big girls and thinking, I like her in a way I don't think I should tell my mum, she'd have been astonished that she grew up to be this. That girl grew up to be Horse, by the way, and I grew up to be the Chief Design Officer of Scottish Government. Talking about a world that's not designed for us, there's nothing to click my... It's an honour to be here, it's a real pleasure to be here, and Louise mentioned at the beginning that we've published now our response to your challenge to government to get its act together on design and on policy for women and girls in this country, and to be part of driving equality faster and harder. I'm the one that owns one of those recommendations, and it's the recommendation around the Scottish approach to service design and to ensure that we have gender-sensitive design embedded in the way that we go about that. And listening to Christina there, I was thinking to myself that we have a lovely kind of parallel. We have a number of parallels. One of them is around toilets, funnily enough. If you ask any of my colleagues, I'm known also as the toilet woman. This came about because I was... first noted for being very annoyed at a man in a meeting who started discussing the fact that a lot of men found gender-neutral toilets uncomfortable because they had to close the door when they go to pee, to which my response was, close the bloody door. And I've had a long-standing other irritation about toilets because I'm disabled and I spend a lot of my life in toilets where the red cord has been lifted up off the ground and hooked round. Thank you, ladies. which is completely inappropriate, and it means if you're disabled and you fall on the floor, you can't actually get to pull the disabled emergency cord that you need to be able to pull. So if any of you ever see that, please do unhook the cord and make sure it's hanging on the floor. And if it's not hanging on the floor, make sure that you go and speak to somebody and tell them that it is. So I spend a lot of my time angrily remonstrating with managers of venues saying your disabled toilet isn't working properly. The other thing that we have in common, though, is that we both are effectively one another end of that kind of policy issue, because data drives policy, but it also drives design. When I joined government, I spent quite a lot of time trying to think, I don't really know how this is working. I'm here to help Scottish Government design services and deliver services, and we've got a lot of those now to design and deliver. And that's a real challenge. Designing anywhere is really hard. But I need to try and figure out how this works. What's policy? What does that mean? And I spent a long time kind of talking to people and trying to think about it, and eventually I had to put it into my own space. So eventually I went, oh, okay, policy is the design brief. Policy is the thing that drives what it is we try to achieve in the world in public services. So, okay, so that's why I need to understand how policy is made. And that's why I need to think to myself about how I can make sure that when we're designing public services, that that's happening close enough to the making of the policy that we can do some very simple and smart things like learn by iterating what we're doing as we're designing the policy and the service together. Now, we've made huge strides in that over the very short period of time that I've been at Scottish Government. It's only about 4 or 5 years. When I first joined, it was really difficult to understand how we were going to do that. If you were to go in and look at the Social Security programme right now, you would find a programme where policymakers, legislators, service designers, they're all sitting together, they're all working together, and they're feeding in and off each other constantly. Now, that's a hard job to get to. It's taken us a while. And what's really important in that is that that data that is driving the decision-making around policies is also driving decision-making around services, and we need to bring these two things together, and we need to make sure that we are sensitive to all of the issues that would affect anyone's use of that service when we're making those choices. But I'll be really, really honest, I seem to have spent the last week or two going to meetings and turning up with a script of things I wanted to say, and then finding at the last minute that I'm just sort of going, I'm missing a trick. So I'm going to be really, really honest with you. If we did that really, really well, it would still probably not work that well. Because the issue isn't just that the data that's going into the system isn't reflective of the lives and needs and experiences and problems and issues of the women and girls that experience those things. It's also that we're not there enough. I was really glad to be hosting the International Design and Government Conference yesterday in Edinburgh, and it was a fantastic gathering. We had over 200 people, 90 organisations and 13 countries represented at that meeting, all of them designers who work in governments or for governments around the world. And unlike here today, I actually found myself completely thrown at one point, because I stood up and realised that I was standing in a room looking out at 2 other visibly disabled people. And as a designer, in my working life, that had never happened to me before. I'm almost always the only disabled person in the room. I'm also very frequently the only woman in the room, and I'm also more frequently the only senior woman in the room. There just aren't enough of us in the profession. There just aren't enough of us working to ensure that when we make decisions around that data, when we think about what to do with that data, we're thinking about that correctly. So the Scottish approach to service design is trying to solve a number of problems, a bit like the drive to make sure that we have gender-sensitive data. We need gender-sensitive design. But if that's all we do, if we don't make sure that it's not just about gender-sensitive design and gender-sensitive data, but it's that women are in the room with us at all levels when we make those decisions, we're still likely to get it wrong. And, like you, Christina, on my good days, I hope that the reason that we get it wrong so often is that human beings are basically quite kind, and actually designing things is really, really hard. It's very difficult to design things, any kinds of things. I've designed things, I've designed products and services in the private sector, in the third sector, and in government. And in every single experience I've had, it's been really, really hard. Design is a process of problem solving and compromise and imperfection and making mistakes and then trying to get it right. Which sounds a lot like what government is as well, I think, actually. But anyway, it's a really difficult process. But if we don't have enough different kinds of minds in the room and different experiences and different views on things around the table when we're going through that process, we'll keep getting it wrong. And if our thinking is that all we need to do is make sure that we've got the right data to feed into the machine, to give to government and tell them, there you go, you get on with that, then we'll still get it wrong because we don't have enough of us in the room. Now, there are two ways we can tackle that, and we're really committed in Scottish Government to tackling both of those. And the first one, the obvious one, is to get more women into the profession, to get more people with more diverse experience into the profession, so that when we're designing services or when we're making policy for that matter, we've got that diversity around us. And we're making some progress on that. But even if we do all of that, as a designer, it's my knowledge, my experience, that if I have the people who need the thing that I'm trying to make in the room with me, and if I have enough of them there often enough, they will frighten me into doing what good design needs, which is it needs you to think again and again and again. When I used to teach design, I used to drive my students insane because I kept saying to them, right, go away, think about that problem, look at all the data, come back with a solution. And they'd come back and they're all proud of themselves. And then I'd say, great, now go and find another one. And then they'd come back with another one and I'd say, great, find another one. And then they'd come back with another one and I'd say, right, go and find a reason that that's not going to work. And when you do that over and over again, you eventually begin to understand that there is no perfect solution. There's an imperfect solution, which is the best one that you can come up with. And once you get it out there, you can continually improve it. If we don't have you in the room with us, not just as designers, but as users and citizens, we'll still keep getting it wrong. And again, I'm going to be really honest. Oops, sorry. As a designer anywhere, but also especially in government, we need you to be more willing to do this for us. And we need to figure out how to make that possible for you. But we can't do that without you telling us. We need to start using the idea that in Scotland, we're going to really commit to creating a shared approach to service design so that we can do the smart thing we need to do, which is join up organisations. Because we still design service journeys for public service users around a single organisation giving you its bit of the journey. We did some research looking at relationship breakdown, and we had two sort of scenarios, a very sort of amenable relationship breakdown and then one where there was violence involved. And in both scenarios, actually, it was well over 20 organisations that the people going through that experience needed to touch in the public sector, sometimes the private and third sector, in order to fully resolve that issue. And for those in the more violent relationships, it was 40 organisations. Every single one of them currently designs their bit of that journey by themselves. So how can we make sure that they can join that up? Because if they don't know that they need to do that, and if they don't have common ways of working that enable them to do that, they can't. And that's pretty much where we are right now. Now, we are starting to make some real progress. We have a commitment now to the idea that we do need a shared approach to designing public services in Scotland, that we do need to break down these organisational silos, that we do need to make sure that when we design things, we bring service users and citizens into the room. And again, I'll refer to social security as a fantastic example of this. Our keynote speaker at the event yesterday was Sally Witcher from Inclusion Scotland, who's also the chair of the Social Security Commission. And Sally shared with us the incredibly powerful story of how we designed the charter for the Social Security Agency. A process that involved service users and policy and service designers working really closely together to look at what the evidence was telling us, to think about what was possible, to make the kind of compromises and decisions we needed to make, and then to make those decisions, fix them, and get them out in the world. And she shared some of the feedback that she got from her side of that table, from the participants, the people who had lived experience of claiming disability benefits in particular, about how moving that was for them. And the words that they used were, that was the first time I ever felt listened to and valued and respected by government. Now, I sat on the other side of that table, and I watched the people in my teams coming back and saying exactly the same thing, that they were so moved to the point of tears by the stories that they were hearing and by the process that they went through to come to those decisions together. Doing this together empowers all of us. It ensures that all of us have a chance to step back from the determination that we often feel in life to push forward. I mean, again, like Christina, on my good days, I assume that a lot of the reason we get design so badly wrong is that human beings are quite kind. We have an instinct to help people, and that instinct, unfortunately, can be counterproductive because we tend to see what we think is a problem, jump in and try and solve it, and then step back and wonder, why didn't that work? And of course, the reality is that my understanding of your problem and your understanding of your problem often don't align. Every time I walk into a hotel, if I walk up to the reception, they'll book me into a room, I'll go to the room, I'll walk back down to the reception, and I'll say, I'm really sorry. I know I'm disabled, but disabled rooms are designed for people in wheelchairs, not people on crutches. It's the worst room you can put me in. Everything is far too low, the room is far too big, I can't wall walk, this isn't going to work for me. That person didn't do that to drive me nuts. I've got over being angry about it. That person did that because they were being kind. They thought there's a disabled person, I'll put them in the disabled room, that seems obvious. These instincts to try and solve problems too quickly, combined with, and again, I'll be really honest, combined with a world that expects government and the public sector to solve all our problems immediately and gives us a right rollicking if we don't get it right first time, then that's going to push against our ability to do good design. But if all of you get a chance to come in and be part of that design process, and also, frankly, to learn some of those design skills, to learn how to think more deeply and richly about problems, how to resist for a bit the instinct that drives so many of us to try and solve problems quickly, to collaborate, to consider all the constraints that we all operate within, and to come up with solutions and then try them and fail, because that is what design is. It's a process of trying things and failing until you get it right. If you're part of that, if you come in and be part of that, and if we open up that opportunity for you in the right ways to support you to be able to do that, we will get to better solutions more quickly. That we know, and the Social Security Programme is beginning to demonstrate that for us in a really clear and consistent way. But that needs your input and your energy. That needs you to drive us and to tell us what is it that we need to do to make it more possible for you to be part of designing the public services that you use and need. I know we're talking about policy coherence here today, but I always think back to, I live in Dundee, and I remember when the Fairer Scotland consultation was happening, and I was sitting in front of a guy who had one of the leaflets about it. And I overheard him saying to his pal, Fairer Scotland consultation, got a leaflet about that. What the fuck's a consultation? And that kind of insight is what good design tries to drive you away from. Good design is about saying, what is it that's going to help me understand where you're at and you understand where I'm at so that we can collectively come up with a good solution. And until we learn to do that really well, we're going to continue to be in this quite confrontational relationship with each other. Now, Scottish Government is really committed to bringing service designers into the design process. But we also need you to tell us, how can we make that more for you, better for you, easier for you? And we need you to be more willing to do that. Because for most of us, policy is I know from not many of the people in this room, but for most of us in our daily lives, policy feels a bit remote. You know, for me, when I joined government, vaguely know what it is, but I'm not really that sure. But services, those are things we all use all the way through our lives. The Social Security Agency that we're building today will touch every single person in this country, pretty much, over the next few years. Whether or not you directly use it, you're almost certainly going to have somebody in your friends or family network who's going to use it. This is massive. If every single public service is designed with lots of citizens involved in that, and if we get good at helping figure out how to make that engagement powerful and rich and meaningful, and for you to learn a little bit about design. I spent a long time teaching students design, and I've seen over and over again what happens when somebody suddenly gets it. So if you keep pushing us to bring you into the room, and if we keep getting better at bringing you into the room, we suddenly have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of opportunities for citizens to be part of design and to learn a bit of those design skills. And if we do that, we turn the entire country into the biggest design school in the world. And I've spent a lot of my working life watching what happens to people when they learn about design, when that little thing clicks, when they suddenly go, oh yeah, I keep getting that wrong because I haven't figured out what the problem is. Not, I keep getting that wrong because I haven't figured out what the solution is, which in essence is what good design is. If we get that right, and if we can do that, we can really start to deliver on some of the challenges that you've raised around how we work as a society and how we truly start to unlock equality. And I'm going to go back in my mind now to that girl. And, as soon as we invent time-traveling data technology, I'll send that picture back to her. But I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to learn some of the things that I've learned about design, because I want to make sure that everyone, and we in Scottish Government mean everyone, so we are redesigning design itself to be inclusive, because it isn't. Make sure that everyone has that opportunity. That girl and the life that she's going to face, that story will be a very different one. She's not going to spend quite so much of her time feeling completely powerless and invisible and voiceless. And she's going to find her power and her voice a lot earlier than she did, and she's going to hold on to that a lot longer than she did. We started off by talking a lot about data and numbers and how we get lost in that. I get very motivated by the fact that of all the people who have had the kind of MS that I have as long as I've had it, 1 in 50 are still working. And that's not because I'm special. It's because I happen to have a nice, benign course of my MS. I happen to have got more disabled at the point in my life where I'd managed to find myself a good job and was earning well. And all of those things allow me to continue to work. But there are 49 other people out there who are not working right now. And how do we make this a world that they can work in? And that girl being told she can't play football, I don't want any other girl to go through that experience. So if we, as Scottish Government, can work with citizens to really figure out how to design services well, work with you, get you to tell us how to make it possible for you to be in the room with us. We're honestly ready to do this, but we need you to push back on us. Then we can start to seriously address some of these challenges. Otherwise, all we're going to do is just keep repeating the cycle of gathering data, getting it wrong, and then not being able to go back and get it right. So thanks for reminding me of all of the reasons that data and design are important. And thank you for reminding me that actually none of that will really mean anything unless we're all in the room together trying to work on this. Thank you.